Well, Jason, welcome. We are so glad that you are joining us for the Primer podcast, and we're so excited you're coming on Sunday.
Yes. Yes. I can't wait. I've been excited for a few months and praying, and it's going to be great to be with you guys.
Yeah, tell us a little bit. So I know that you have a podcast called Speak with People. I've been able to follow along a little bit. So it's kind of fun to be on the other end interviewing you as opposed to vice versa. Tell everybody a little bit more about what your podcast is about.
Yeah. So every day, leaders are going into the workplace, they're going into their neighborhoods, they're going into their communities, and they have a decision to make. How will they use their influence? And if you have influence, you're a leader, John Maxwell says. And so we created this podcast to give everyday leaders an opportunity to learn how to grow their influence. And so some people are like, well, I'm not a leader. Well, if you have influence, you're a leader. Do you volunteer in your kid's school? Are you, leading a 5-minute presentation at the next staff meeting at work? Are you, gathering all the other parents at the soccer field together to organize something? You're a leader. And so we started the podcast so we could interview amazing leaders from around the globe. I mean, last week alone, I interviewed an amazing woman in Paris.
Oh, wow.
I interviewed another woman in Vancouver, another woman in Connecticut, and leaders just from around the world to be able to say, hey, how do we improve? How do we keep growing? How do we increase our influence by becoming better communicators?
Yeah.
And so that's what we do. So twice a week, we air an episode of the Speak of People podcast for people like you. So you can go out into your everyday world and improve your communication skills, especially as believers, especially as people who have the Bible behind us. We have this amazing opportunity to represent Jesus and be his ambassador. And so that's why we do it.
Absolutely. Yeah, the Bible is the number one resource right there. But even being equipped to speak with people, and you have this really key difference in speaking with people versus speaking at people, which I think is going to resonate with a lot of us. Can you tell us a little bit more about what that difference is?
Yeah, I felt it. I think for the first time, I was 10 years old. My parents took me to a rock concert in downtown Detroit. And we were in the Fox Theater in the very last row. I was way up top. And I think it was Bob Seger. I think it was. And I'll never forget, as a 10-year-old, I'm standing on the seat and I'm watching all of these adults go crazy the entire night. And then at the very end, he steps up to the microphone and he starts to tell a story. And the whole place just went quiet and everybody quieted down. And it was so mind blowing for me at 10 years old. Immediately I thought, okay, that's the difference of when somebody's yelling at me to get my attention. Somebody is trying to force me to understand something. He just spoke with us. And actually the next day I went home into my parents' basement in Detroit. I built a stage in the corner. And then I would invite over all of my neighborhood friends. I would have my mom make her world famous chocolate chip cookies. I would bribe them and say, hey, come listen to me. And I do like little sermons. I do little comedy things. I do little sales pitches. And if they listened, they would get the cookies. And so ever since then, I was on a mission trip maybe 15 years ago. And this phrase, speak with people, not at them, just kept resonating, especially because I was in the Dominican. I had natural communication barriers. And so, it was easy for me to want to get worked up or, don't you understand what I'm trying to say? And I thought, no, we've got to continue to speak with. And I actually found it from Proverbs 10:11. And in the Message, it says, the mouth of a good person is a life-giving well, and the mouth of the wicked is a dark cave of abuse. And I thought, wow. That is powerful. We come across people all the time who either speak with you, who speak from a place of trust, a place of joy, a place of collaboration, a place of connection. Yeah. Or there's people who speak at, and we've all been in that category, but we talk down, we're forceful with our communication, we manipulate, we try to, use fear and control. And so I just thought, wouldn't it be better if we speak with? So we are this life-giving well, this fountain where we breathe into people, and not so much this dark cave of abuse. I mean, Proverbs is filled with what happens when we speak at people, how violent our words are, and how much we can disrupt them. I thought I came up with the phrase. I did not. If you're a baseball fan, the late Vin Scully said it first, according to my research,
Okay.
years
I
and
did not know
years
that.
and years ago. Yes. So
Oh.
nothing new under the sun.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, when I think about speaking at people, it sounds more like a weapon. It's
Ooh.
something that we're not using to edify and encourage other people, like you said. Something that I've also thought about speaking with people is how important listening is in that process.
Hmm.
Curious if you've thought much about the importance of listening and how we use that as a tool to speak with people. What are your thoughts on that?
Oh my goodness. Yes. I mean, talk less and listen more. I mean, it's just such a good, amazing principle. I mean, especially before we speak, ask the right questions and then just listen. There's a principle out there I mean, we talk about it a lot in a bunch of different areas, but 20-80. 20% of the time I'm listening, I'm showing up, I'm there with my presence. A lot of times when we talk to people, we're checking our phone, we're checking our watch, and we're looking all over the place. We're interrupting, we're trying to just wait for our turn to talk. And instead, flip it. Instead of 80% doing all those kind of things, 20% show up, ask the right questions, and then listen.
Mhm.
It's absolutely amazing what happens through the power of listening and how you can really connect on such a deep level. I mean, nothing helps build trust more than listening. So it's so incredibly powerful. And especially as we look at Jesus all throughout the Gospels, I mean, he was not talking a lot. He asked a lot of questions and he listened. So
He
it's just
answered
powerful.
three. It's like three of his questions, I think, are what he answered, but everything else he just asked.
Yeah. Yeah. I wonder if the people who followed him, a lot, would get frustrated. Just answer the question, please.
First, I'd be like, Jesus, you've told me this. You've asked this question a million times. I just need an answer. Like I do that.
Yes.
Yeah, questions though, I think are another important thing to be thinking about, and how that too is a tool. It's not just listening, but having the ability to ask questions. I know you've talked before about how close-ended questions are not very fruitful. For our listeners, close-ended is just asking a question that's yes or no, but going towards more open-ended questions. And I think that leans towards healthy communication. You talk a little bit about the difference between toxic and healthy communication. In fact, I've heard one of your quotes is, we wait until our communication is toxic to start paying attention. And that is so powerful. What are one or two signs that our communication is healthy?
Oh wow, that's so good. Let me just say something about the toxic and
That's
unhealthy.
right.
We we just take it for granted. We take our communication for granted. We do it all day long. Most studies show we do it up to about 90% of our day. And communication is not just speaking. 7% of it is speaking. 38% is our tone. If you've ever parented preteens or teenagers, you know how important tone is. 55% is our body language. Are we crossing our arms? Are we rolling our eyes? Are we, tapping our finger? And so we take it for granted until it gets toxic, just like our breathing. We just take it for granted all day long until we start to get sick and our chest starts to get heavy. And then we're like, ooh, well, don't wait till it gets toxic. Don't wait till you put up a wall between you and other people, your family, your loved ones, your neighbors, your coworkers. Every single day, take a stock at how healthy your communication is. I like to say healthy communication is oxygen for your relationships. So the more you choose to speak with people, so listen, ask great questions, be empathetic. All of those kind of communication behaviors, the deeper the connection will be, the stronger the ties, and the more trust will absolutely happen. So when you are healthy with your communication, you'll notice people are calling you more often. You'll notice that people are asking for your opinion more often. You'll notice that they start to lean in. You'll be sitting over coffee and you'll go to say something and they'll, because they're just ready.
Yeah.
And then on the flip end, if your communication's more unhealthy, if it's more toxic. It's like people are going to brace before you speak. Sometimes we use questions as like a dagger, and we ask like really difficult questions that kind of put people in the corner.
Yeah.
We got to ask, like you talked about, open-ended questions. Questions like, tell me more, or explain what you mean. We have 4 generations working together, sometimes 5. Every generation has a different way that they communicate. And so if you don't understand what somebody says, ask, could you explain that for me? And then ask them, could you define that for me? Because we're all assuming and thinking different things. And so a lot of these communication things, when I look at Jesus in John 4 and he speaks to the woman at the well, I mean, it's like a communication masterclass, because one, he shouldn't be talking to her, right? Because he's a rabbi, she's a Samaritan woman. Jews didn't like the Samaritans to begin with, and he is, and she's shocked by it. And not only, is he asking for water? Obviously, he does the miraculous there spiritually, but it's just amazing that she's just blown away. And so in your life, I ask myself this: who are some people that I normally probably wouldn't go out of my way to talk to? Can I look for opportunities? And every morning, God, send some of those people who, need someone to communicate with them in healthy ways. And then prayerfully give me the strength and courage to do it when the moment arises.
Prayer. He's going to send those people right away.
Yes. It's like praying for patience. And then all of a
Oh,
sudden,
yeah. There it is. You're sitting in traffic and that's all you get. Yep.
yes.
I'm glad you brought up that story of the Samaritan woman, the woman at the well, because I know you've had a lot of time to think about that, and how Jesus, by speaking to her, is doing something powerful by just acknowledging her presence. And um, it's a story, and there's a lot of stories that we tell to kind of unveil more of a person's life. Story is a word that I continue to be drawn to, and I know you talk a lot about. You've mentioned it already in our time talking together. I know some of us maybe feel like we're not as equipped to tell our own story or to ask questions to uncover another person's story. But like you said, it really helps build more immediacy, more of a connection to another person. Can you speak into that a little bit and maybe tell us a little bit more about maybe how we can develop our storytelling skills or uncovering another person's story?
Oh, I love that. Donald Miller wrote and says that the human brain longs for story, right? Like we can't wait to hear a story. And it's just absolutely powerful. If I went up to my 11-year-old and I said, Kai, can I tell you about the time? I mean, when I start to go into the story, it's amazing at the different gears that start to shift. The problem is many of us as adults, we kind of belittle story, and we tell ourselves things like, well, I'm not a good storyteller, or I can't tell stories, or the big one, I don't have any stories to tell about my life. I'm a speaker, so I travel around and I tell stories for a living. And every single time, someone comes up to me and says, oh, I wish I had stories like you do.
Mm-hmm.
The reality is your life is so worthy that it is story worthy. I guarantee you do have stories to tell. You just haven't learned how to use the muscle in your brain that remembers those stories. And so it could be as easy as every day on your phone, just writing down a story that happened. Oh, somebody cut me off, and instead of, yelling out the window, I turned on Brandon Lake, whatever the story is. But just write it down. And then after 30 days, you'll be like, wow, I guess I do have stories to tell. So one, don't even say the words out loud. My life isn't very exciting. I don't have any great stories. That's not true. You're a child of God. You're made in his image. Every single day you get to influence people. You get to use the gifts that God's given you. So you have a tremendous story to share. And then two, don't ever preface it by saying, well, my come to Jesus story is not very exciting. Absolutely it is. Absolutely it is, because you were once lost and now you're found. And so tell that story, all the time that you can get. Now, on the flip end of that, I like to encourage people to be a story catcher. And so what does that mean? It means when you can listen when you can understand, when you can remember other people's stories, what happens in their brain, especially as they watch you listening to their story, it signals to their brain that they can trust you. And so if you want to be someone of influence, you want to be a leader, learn people's stories and remember them.
Yeah.
We all the time we say, well, I'm no good with names. Oh, I can't remember those things.
Mhm.
You actually can. Again, it's just learning how to use a different
Muscle.
muscle.
Yeah.
Maybe we all can't, but do everything you can to remember those stories. And then as you meet with that person, as you are in relationship with them, bring back, close the story loop, ask them, whatever happened with your grandma, did she end up doing that? You'll just be amazed at how it will deepen your relationships and it just do powerful things. I mean, same thing. Like if I'm working in my office, I go in every day, I, when I did work in an office, now I work at home, but I would ask people their stories and I would figure out different parts of their story and remember them. And so story is so incredibly valuable. Remember them, do absolutely everything you can to ask the right questions and then gather them because it really will do incredible things to your relationships.
Yeah, I don't even think it's too far off to say that if you're asking somebody their story, to go and somehow record that later. So that way you have that information that you can go back to before you go to another meeting with that person. I think I've done that before. I'll write a note to myself, hey, this person experienced this family death recently, and it's good to remember this next time you see them. Like, I think it's okay to do that. Some people may disagree, but,
I
and I
love that.
yeah, I like what you said too about how our words, they really are speaking life or death over our experience and our lived experience. And so if we tell ourselves we don't have a story, then we'll start to live that. So it's important to tell ourselves we do have a story.
Absolutely.
That's really
It's just crazy. A little shameless plug. I have a book coming out in the fall called Speak with People, Not at Them. And in one of the parts, I talk about how to kind of capture those stories according to kind of the circles of influence in your life. Because we can't remember, we're not going to remember everything. We're not going to be close to everybody. Jesus talked to the example of Jesus. He talked to the masses and then he had the 120 and then he had the different numbers, 12 and the 3 and, all that kind of stuff. But for you as a mom or a dad or in your workplace, who exactly. So I have this system. I love baseball. And so I use baseball analogy to say, okay, who's in your dugout, who's playing on the field. And so we just kind of break out these circles of influence. And then according to those circles of influence, then I actually have a spreadsheet that after those meetings, just like you talked about, I'll say, okay, Megan, her dog has ADHD, and boy, they're just trying to figure out how to get the dog.
read my mind. That is 100% my dog.
Well, I just made that up, so I'm glad I did it.
Oh,
But I'll write that down, and then before I go into another coffee meeting with you, or follow up, then I can say, "Hey, how is your dog doing, by the way?"
yeah.
And it also helps if you're sending handwritten cards or trying to connect, with people deeply, or sending text messages. It's just those little things that really do add up that give you an exponential return on your relationship building, your trust, your influence. So it's really powerful.
Absolutely. Well, Jason, thank you for spending some time talking more about just the power of our words. Tell everybody where they can find you and if there's any final thoughts that you have.
Absolutely. Final thoughts. I would absolutely encourage you before every moment that's presented with another human being, whether it's face to face, on the phone, over a screen, over a text message, pause before you answer. And then when you do, speak words of life, speak words, breathing into them, because it really is a powerful opportunity that you have to change lives and to expand your influence in the process. You could find more about me at speakwithpeople.com. You could find information on our podcast, our blog posts, the different courses we have that help you, all of those different things. And so I bet I'm on all the socials, Jason, Raitz, Raitz. So thank you so much for letting me have a conversation with you today.
Awesome. Thanks, Jason.